This is a Dynamics 365 podcast focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. Over the coming weeks, I'll be interviewing seasoned professionals from various parts of the world, talking about what it takes to be successful in a Dynamics 365 practice. Thanks to Kingsway Soft for sponsoring the Dynamics 365 Practice Podcast. Kingsway Soft is a leading integration solution provider offering software solutions that make data integration affordable and painlessly easy. Thousands of enterprise clients from over 70 countries and regions rely on Kingsway Soft to integrate data with various business systems in order to drive their business efficiency and fully leverage their information assets. Kingsway Soft is a leading provider of Microsoft Dynamics integration software, including Dynamics 365, CRM, AX, NAV, GP, SL, as well as many other applications such as Marketo, Dropbox, QuickBooks, and Salesforce. Whether you need one solution or several, Kingsway Soft works easily within the SSIS platform to make your integration processes as quick and easy as possible. Many of their clients have seen 3 to 10 times greater data integration performance after switching to the SSIS integration platform. Hi everyone, I'm here with Chuck Ingram. In this episode, we're going to focus on the customer. Chuck is hyper-focused on digital disruption and the accompanying customer shifts. He works with his team on developing business models and practices that deliver customer experiences and outcomes, not just projects. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Mark, for having me.
Excellent. So, first of all, before we talk about how you engage with your customers, tell me a bit about you as a customer. What are your likes, dislikes, and how does the way you act or react as a customer translate into your business?
That's a neat question. And I'd have to say I probably like what most people like these days. You know, it's kind of like we can get anything in the world that'll fit on my credit card limit by just an app on my phone, right?
Yeah.
I could, and at the same time, I can order books. I love to read. I can order pieces. I love to play the guitar. I can order pieces for a guitar that it would have taken me hours to drive downtown and get. I can go get memorabilia from back in the day for music and things like that. I think my expectations are not unlike a lot of people. It's just everything I can get now. And I want to be able to do it on my own, but I also want a lot of attention when I need the attention.
Correct. Yeah.
If that makes, you probably feel the same way. During the purchase, you want to be able to do things on your own, but when I need help, I want it now. And the same thing. It's kind of after the sale. You almost get scared after you've bought something. Think about a big purchase like a car or just something small, and I think that applies to what we do. In a lot of ways, where for so long it was all about the project, and now it's becoming more about the journey and about what the software solution can do for the customer. Yeah. There's you probably remember at CRM UG last year they had Ray Wang come out, and I picked up his book and I've read a lot of what he talks about, and he says we're in I think he says post-sale, on-demand, and attention economy. And I think if you almost walk that out, you say, well, you think about the way Chuck and Mark feel in our normal lives and apply that to what we do with our customers. It kind of feels like it's best when we engage with our customers kind of with a purpose, kind of with outcomes and experiences in mind. And we're thinking about them over the long term, and what are they going to do with this thing after they're done with the implementation, and then not just the project, and how do we stay in front of them? How do we when they need us? How do we, whether it's chat on our website, or if they hit us up on social, or if they want to contact us on the phone, or they want to go on a portal? How are we available at the moment of need for the customer. So I think things are kind of moving from this big project mentality to how a longer term experience and journey type engagement with the customers. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, it does. So what patterns are you implementing to make sure that you can have successful engagements time and time again? Are you redeveloping the way you're engaging with your customers, or transitioning that as you see this customer lifecycle engagement start to change in the market?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's interesting. We if you think about it, we have, we talked before that we turned the podcast on about our healthcare solution, and we have a really cool healthcare solution, and one of the coolest things about it is the customers that implement that, where we've been able to measure it, they have about a 50% reduction in chronic illnesses that they measure, like hypertension and things like that. And
incredible.
Man, that's meaningful. We all probably have a family member that is affected by high blood pressure, and hopefully not the things that happen as a result of high blood pressure gone awry. And it's interesting if we kind of take the Stephen Covey approach and begin with the end in mind and think about that outcome and walk that backward through to the very first time that we meet that customer, it gets really cool. And the customer experience people, they do this thing called journey mapping. And we actually did that with our process. We literally looked at where, from the time we met the customer to the time we were going through the sales process and things like that, and then all the way through to the time the project starts and to the various phases in the project, and even certainly after the customer goes live and how we can help them then. But I'll give you a couple examples. When you're doing this journey mapping, they have these things called friction points or moments of truth, and a really important one was at the end of the sales process, when usually Chuck and Mark and folks like us are like, well, we just won this opportunity with the customer. Now it's going to be a project, and we're really excited. If you take yourself out of your head and put yourself in the customer's head, they just went through this big selection process, and they had these internal discussions about what to focus on in this negotiation. Did we make the right decision cutting this scope to get the price to where we needed it to be with our partner? And they're worried, and we've got day jobs, do we have enough time to be involved with this project? And when Chuck and Mark get here, are we going to be able to give them the time? And they're stressed. So we actually, it's funny, our vice president of sales, Kevin Armstrong, and I were having a conversation, and this started when we had a project where a customer wanted a really fast start date and the resources weren't ready. And long time ago, Kevin owned a restaurant. And he said, when the food's not ready, you got to spend even more time with the customer, bringing them, some appetizers on the house, or the iced tea extra. Can I get you a drink and things like that? And somehow that morphed into. I said, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we take that time to take this, quote unquote, moment of truth and walk that out into like the P90X of getting ready for a project. I like when you think about the times you've, January the 1st, you've gone to, I'm going to work out this year. This is going to be the year that I'm going to be the workout king. But if for some reason, if you just sign up for the gym membership, it's like the people that I know that stick with it. It doesn't matter if it's CrossFit or P90X or if it's a program, they'll do it and they'll stick with it. And if it's just go to the gym and do chest this day and back this day and legs this day, it's something got in the way. And I wasn't ready. So we literally tried to suss out what were if the customer had 10 days to get ready to have the very best project in the world. Let's look at what success looks like. I love Tim Ferriss, and he kind of the 4
He's one of my favorite authors.
I'm looking at his Tools of Titan book right now, and
great book.
Yeah, it really is, and so very well, he subscribes to deconstruct what success looks like, and we've tried to do that in 2 or 3 of these moments of truth, and this one ended up manifesting itself in this thing we call 10 Days to CRM Success. And it's literally, you can go through, and we have an ebook and that kind of thing, but it literally, you can walk through day one. Oh, we got to establish the vision and objectives, and then here are the activities to do to get that done. Day 2, and day 1 is the outcomes. You and I talked about it at the beginning of this session. Day 2, assemble the team. Day 3, activate the team. Day 4, define the experience. Because remember, we're not doing transactions anymore. We want experiences and outcomes. And day 5, it's assess the business processes. Day 6, learn the canvas. Our canvas has gotten pretty amazing lately with this micro. So if we help the customer to understand what this canvas we're going to work on together looks like, we can have a better conversation. But if this is completely new to them, then there's going to be resistance, and we're not going to have that best conversation. Then just really quickly, day 7 is, kind of go back and look at the solution requirements against, in a different environment. When we were not in the heavy negotiation phase, and when more people in the business are involved, establish how we're going to communicate. That's super, super important. And nobody ever wants to talk about it, but you also on day 9 we talk about risks. And the last one is serve the users. Figure out how we can help. What are the job impacts people are going to have? What are the time that the users are going to have to invest in making this successful? How are we going to plan intentionally post-sale? Again, another Ray Wang thing. Post-sale to help the users adopt this solution. So that's kind of the 10 days at a glance. And the funny thing is, you and I are a little more focused on what we call CRM, and now it's a piece of Dynamics 365. We ended up finding that this was something that we could do for our business consulting team. Really walk this out to be able to do it for CRM and for ERP as well. So we can have it for the different types of projects to help the customers get ready for success.
So you must be seeing, if you're implementing that consistently across multiple delivery teams, you must start to see some real repeatable consistency starting to come out now.
We have I'll try to say it the right way. When I arrived at Tribridge, we were in a market where you could kind of hire really smart people, and they could lead the customer because they knew the product. Correct. And I think a lot of, I worked at Microsoft for a long time, so I a lot of partners were kind of in that same spot. And now we're in a little different time where the customers can, they get YouTube Red. They can learn everything about the product with no commercials.
Exactly. Yeah.
They can listen to this podcast and learn all kinds of stuff about the product. So it becomes about the how, and the fact that we've done this, 500 times, and here's when we actually have taken this deconstructing success to another level, and we tried to build our methodology into the product. So that not only do we have it, but the customer has it. So when we leave, they can know that, hey, you had these requirements, and we built these things and together, and they worked. We tested them, and they worked. And when we go take a break, and maybe the customer has resources that they want to have be involved, they can keep up with the work together, just like we did. So absolutely. It's our what we call red projects are literally 95% down from 4 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think
that's a massive job.
Yeah, and it wasn't like we stunk either, right?
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, you've been growing successfully for some time, yeah.
Yeah, we're about 4 times bigger than we were 4 years ago, and we've had a corresponding, like a decrease in the way, measuring projects as read. Now that said, I still think that one thing we're working on is there's still a customer expectation that's out there that's almost like what we talked about when we first started speaking, where I can get anything in the world on my phone now. And and you think about there's sometimes you still can be on time, on budget, deliver all the scope, and all those things happen, and still maybe the customer's not happy now. And so that's true. A sign of the times where the focus is on experiences and outcomes and expectations. So sort of the thing that we're getting after now is customer expectations and what they're, if the SOW says this, that's okay. We're going to go do all those things together. But what would it take for the customer to be an advocate for us? That they would not just be happy and satisfied, but they'd tell somebody else. And so we have this thing called conditions of advocacy that we've started. And so at any time during the process where the customer has expectations that maybe aren't documented, or they, something that was perhaps talked about in the sales process and neither one of us ended up putting it in the statement of work, those things get vetted out sooner than later.
Brilliant. Yes, it sounds great. So tell me, as you go into that phase of your 10-day engagement, how do you handle a transition from your sales team? They've been out there, they've won the sale, if you like. They're transitioning it to deliver the project. How do you handle that transition? Because oftentimes in customer engagements, there can be a breakdown in communication maybe between your internal teams and the customer and their expectations. Have you found a way to smooth that process out?
Well, the good news is the 10 days solves for that in part. It gives us a framework we can work from. The other good news is that we intentionally did the journey mapping from the time we meet the customer until forever, right? Until, operate or run or outcomes or however we want to say it. So we have solved for the best that we can. And I'm sure a lot of folks are thinking about this, of how do you get from, and you think about it, customers are in different modes in each point that you're at the beginning. They're like, hey, I'm looking for information, and are you qualified? And as you get through the sales process, they're in a little bit more mode of mitigating risk. Yeah, and correct. So that's the conversations start to be different, and they're kind of remembering everything we say. So what you said becomes even more important, that you have that transition. So part of it is the 10 days, and part of it is the roles that we have. So we have a role in our firm, and I don't think we're completely unusual in this, where we have folks who are focused on the backside of the pre-sales process and into the engagement, so that not a whole new team shows up. And absolutely. And finally, it probably should go without saying is we use the technology that we try to help the customers with. We use the Microsoft Dynamics to track all the conversations in pre-sales, and before anybody sets foot on the project, they're going to get briefed on everything that happened in pre-sales. And so that when they kick off the project, what we don't want is a total new team to show up and they kind of lean against the whiteboard with the, kind of the pocket, the professor jacket with the elbow pocket things and say, tell me about your business. That really makes customers upset.
Exactly.
We definitely tried to solve for that.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it myself many times where, it's almost like Team B goes in, Team A sold it, Team B goes in, and it's like Team B never knew anything about what Team A had talked about in the past, and can create a lot of confusion for the customer.
It sure could. It's interesting. It's funny. It's fun to talk about the customers that were really happy, but the times when the customer wasn't happy, those are the times when you grow the business the most. I saw this back in. I don't know if you follow golf at all.
No, not much.
Well, there was a golfer named Greg Norman, and he was famous for being, he was from Australia, and he was famous for being amazing, and he won tons of tournaments, but he kind of fell short in a couple of key moments in his career. And he said, when you win, you go and you have, knock back a couple beers, but when you lose, that's when you go deep and you go learn stuff, and you kind of work through what we were on time, on budget, knocked out all the scope, and the customer's still upset. How do we solve for that? So that those are things that I'm sure a lot of us are really focused on. And the interesting thing is it ends up suggesting almost different business models where you think about that in 2000. If you and I were in New York City, we're going to hop in a cab, and if one of us is more aggressive, we're going to get the cab faster than the next, the people beside us and things like that. And now it's stress free. We just pull the phone out, and the Uber stops, and the guy's nice, and we know how much it's going to cost. We know that they'll take our credit card, and some of the things that we do in consulting. Still, even though we've all worked to improve it, are still a lot like they were back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And it's sort of time for us to tweak some of those things. And, the customer invest in this software solution to get these outcomes. Like we were talking about with the healthcare folks with the 50% reduction. Same thing applies to a VP of sales. VP of sales is... that person can't sleep at night because they have to sell what they said they're going to sell when they said they're going to sell it. And and I think I saw a statistic that said most sales organizations are at a level of forecasting that's below the odds at craps in Las Vegas. So, think the healthcare one's really important, but the VP of sales would say, well, my job's important too. So how can we help focus on that outcome to help that person get where they want to go? Yeah.
So true. So that's your onboarding process you discussed there. Your project's in flight. There's a good rhythm set up. So what about as a project, if you like, goes live and into your end state? How do you maintain, let's say 6 months, 12 months, a year and a half later, that rhythm though with the customer? Because if you like, oftentimes you're never going to leave the customer. How do you maintain the rhythm of communication and engagement and still have them feeling like, they're going on a first date with you to some degree and wanting to, maintain a healthy relationship with the organization?
I think you said the key word is relationship. And you think about a lot of the quote unquote projects that we do and we're done and we dump tons and tons of features on a customer. And, there's a natural conflict that happens inside the customer's organization. And then this negotiation process where the leadership is not incentivized, but has a goal to get the best deal for the organization. So they're going to buy as many features as they can. and get the shortest timeline as they can because it costs less. At the same time, that's a lot for users to take on, and 50% success rate is the average, or satisfaction rate, I should say, in CRM. And that's kind of this dirty little secret about customer relationship management that folks like you or I we lose sleep over that, because I don't want to be a physician that has 50% success rate. I don't want people limping away from my procedures. I want the people to be happy and be able to have a great life. So we actually kind of, in this whole journey mapping, we did try to solve for that. And we took a little cue from, there are these folks, they have a book called B4B and another one called a Technology as a Service Playbook. I think that the guys had a Consumption Economy as a book as well. And they have this model that it's 4 levels of product service offerings. And the first one is you sell a product. Think of Microsoft when they have Microsoft Office, and you buy it and it's on a disk, and we're happy until 18 months later or 2 years later there's another version or whatever. And then there's level 2 is this product and a service. So almost like what we've done for a long time, where Microsoft makes a beautiful product, and we help the customer use that product. And so product and services. And at level 3 is where it becomes interesting, is where we want to take the product and the services, but then help the customer with adoption and optimization services with it. And so we came up with our version of how we could help customers is this thing we call Adoption Essentials. And it basically is a combination of some apps that we have that are usability type things that we give to the customer as a part of it. It's a subscription, and it's also access to us in terms of we come back and periodically meet with a customer, depending on the subscription level. It's different times, but let's say quarterly. And it's 2 sorted user groups. I should say users, but one are the people that are using the system. How's it going? What have you? Where are you finding friction when you're trying to go through this process? And we build some hours in to help them tweak the screens and do things like that, and then on another level, we get back together with the customer to focus on, from a business perspective, on the outcomes. And we have another. I'll give another plug for the Microsoft App Store. We have another app that's called. You may have to fix this in the audio. We have Pathfinder and Discovery. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Pathfinder is our outcomes app. And it's actually out there. Our customers can download it and just check it out. But it basically helps you think through, what do you want this Dynamics 365 to do for you? And how do we continually check? And we use that app in this process to go back quarterly or whenever it is and touch base with the customer to see if you're that vice president of sales where you could only forecast the business at 15% and you want to get it to 25% and by mid-year and 50% by the end of the year. We're going to measure that together, and if it it means we write different reports, we build in more workflows, whatever it is, we work with those customers on those things. It's funny. It actually has helped us a lot with customers making a decision to work with us as much. It obviously it helps customers from a post-sale perspective kind of get more out of what they've invested in. It also helps us with customers who are kind of, they're in that risk mitigation mode. They kind of feel better about working with Dynamics 365 and a partner like us that can help them maximize the use of it.
Yeah, brilliant. So just to change gears here slightly and to look at customer engagements that haven't been successful, particularly, let's say you've been in a position in the past, I'm sure you have, where a customer has come to you, they've partway through a Dynamics project potentially, maybe even with another partner, or they've tried to build it themselves and they've run into difficulties. How do you take a customer that, if you like, is already burned and turn them around and get a project or an outcome, if you like, that really meets their needs?
I'm sure this happens to every company at one time or another. It seems like they tend to fall in one of two buckets. They either had a mismatch in expectations, where the customer, the SOW said this, and for whatever reason, the other partner built something else, or the time, it's just a mismatch in expectations, or the team that implemented didn't lead the customer. And that number two is the easiest trap to fall in the world. We have a program at Tribridge where we bring young people into the firm and we teach them how to be a consultant and teach them how to be a Dynamics 365 consultant. And one of the sort of been there, done that things that we tell them early on is we want you to lead the customer. We want you to lead with a point of view. We say lead with purpose. We want to lead that customer. And we're guilty of it sometimes too. All of us are. But if you're not careful, you build. The executives of the customer had this vision for this system that we're going to help them do all these things. But then the implementation team, let's say from this other partner, comes in and they build what the old system used to look like. And there was a reason they wanted to move away from that. And that tends to be, between those two things are the reasons that we do that. And sometimes it's frustrating for the customer because they just want to, okay, well, you guys sound like you've done this many times before. Sounds like you have a process. Let's get back going. But sometimes you have to take a couple steps back to do that and find out what the customer really wanted and what were the outcomes that they wanted. What did they want for the users? What did the business need? Because sometimes, and what is it, Mr. Ray Wang says is 50% of the Fortune 500 is gone. Half the Fortune 500 from 2000. Half the Fortune 500 didn't make money last year, and people are changing their business model now so much. And what if the customer had a goal to change their business model? We just, they just built their old system back. So sometimes we have to take a step back and do those things, and that can be a little bit frustrating. But we try to stick to our guns and deliver some tough love there and sort of lead the customer. We just continue to reinforce our team to lead the customer and to help them get back on track to getting those business objectives they want.
Yeah, it's I've definitely seen that exact scenario. A customer will come along and say, we've got the system, it's great, we just want it on the new shiny thing. And it was built 10, 15 years ago, what they're currently using, and there's so many better ways to do things and enhancements and business processes, etc. And so what is your tact with the customer in that situation to go, hey, we're coming in as the expertise in our field, and we know there are better ways to do it. How do you handle that engagement to, if you like, steer the customer into a future state of what they can achieve?
Yeah, we do this thing called we call it a B&A, a business needs assessment, and of course there's a bit of us consuming what's been done, and then we try to walk out what the ideal engagement and almost like use the slow evening DJ voice, the calm with the customer to the business needs assessment, and then we're going to deliver just the amount of functionality that you need in this first release. just so your users can consume it, because that that other functionality just sort of goes to waste if you try to deliver too much. Because the assumption a lot of times when you've had something go wrong is, oh, we got to go faster to catch up. And sometimes the best thing to do is to go slow. You think about like people are talking a lot about the boxing and stuff because of the big fight with McGregor and Mayweather. And any time that's been in any kind of a martial art or boxing, they teach you to punch really slow at first. And then the more you do it, it's like lightning, or the people who are good at it. So sometimes we have to. Yeah, we have to slow the customer down, do a business needs assessment, convince our customer that sometimes it's best not to do a big bang. Sometimes it's best to do minimum viable functionality at first, then release additional functionality in periodic phases after that. And then kind of like you and I talked about before, have an intentional plan and a focus on that adoption and optimization to help those users absorb that functionality as we're going to kind of bring it forward in a way they can consume it. And then finally, keep that focus from that business needs assessment engaged with the leadership. So that's kind of, if I had to say, our and it's not secret sauce really at all. I mean, I'm sure any partner in the dynamic space who said, what does the best engagement that we do look like? It looks like that. It's not a giant project that happens really fast, hardly ever. It's usually one where we come in and we sit down with a customer and work with them on their business. We deliver just the right functionality up front. We have plans to release that in phases, and then we have this intentional focus on the adoption and the outcomes of the and when we do that, it seems like it's hard for things to go wrong.
So true. So true. So you've mentioned adoption a few times. Do you formalize how adoption is carried out as part of your project delivery to make sure the customer, gets those full benefits? I'm sure you've heard of ProSci, and there's various other equivalents of ProSci in the industry around adoption. Do you have a systematized method to make sure that the adoption is received from the customer side?
Well, we certainly try with our program that we call Adoption Essentials. That's our taking, like you and I talked about earlier, our Tim Ferriss, let's deconstruct where adoption has been awesome. And make that a program, and it's a subscription for us, and like we were saying before, it has three pieces to it. It has, and that's how we walk that out, where it's a little bit of technology, it's a lot of ongoing engagement and measurement. We use some apps to help us measure it, and then we've got some tools, a portal and some self-service tools that the customer can use to help themselves as well.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm going to ask you now about difficult customers. I'm sure that you've had them across your career. I'll give you an example of one I've had is that the customer, the project's kicked off, the customer's brought an external contractor in to represent them from a project management point of view. And fundamentally that individual is misaligned with even the organizations that they're representing side of things. How do you proactively handle where you feel the customers, what they're asking for is not going to achieve the outcomes they need? They're difficult. How have you effectively handled that?
Yeah, especially it's really tricky when a situation like you said, Mark, where it happens in flight. Because what it does is even if you've done everything right and you did the 10 days and you had a great pre-sales process, and maybe you've even done the initial phases of the project really well, that can really be a challenge, because maybe that outside contractor has come in and has a goals to reduce the timeline, and you know that maybe is not a good thing. So what we found is a couple things. One is to make absolutely sure that we have our communication structured and in place. So for executives, I would actually immediately treat it as a red project, even though it's not a red project technically.
Yeah, brilliant.
And we'd have the weekly comms with the executives, with weekly. Let me say that right. I'd have it monthly with the execs, weekly with the project team, and depending on where we are in the project, if we're not having the success we want with that communication, we have to have our escalation process in place so that when we and the contractor are not agreeing, that we can say, okay, respectfully, we need to go and talk to the executive leadership team. What we've also found, even when things are going very, very well, during the testing time, we believe that the communication has to be daily, because that's when the users are absorbing the most change. That they're and plus we're going to have to respond to things. But I'm with you, I've seen that happen where either the customer has brought in someone to kind of look after the project and shorten the timeline, or they bring in resources to help, and if you're not careful, you get in the situation of the finger pointing, and so the communication helps with that. The other thing that helps with that, at least in our world, is because we use our methodologies baked into the CRM. It's kind of like we're all everybody sees what everybody is doing in one place. There's not, we got to go look on this SharePoint site and this SharePoint site and this SharePoint. It's all in one place. It may actually be in SharePoint sites, but they go to CRM to see it, by the way.
So what about the difference between commercial customers and government customers? I understand that you have worked in both sectors. Do you see many differences between a government organization as your customer as opposed to commercial?
Mostly, it's funny. I've been blessed to work with some really, really, really big customers on both the commercial and the public sector side. We have a number of really big public sector projects going on right now, and to make a little joke, if I'm not careful, I can mess up either one. In theory, there's more rigor in the enterprise public sector side, but and less politics on the commercial side. But I can almost argue that I have commercial customers that are extremely small, where literally they're afraid to tell the dad about scope creep, because the dad's the guy that writes the checks. So it ends up being in a lot of ways, the public sector, the rigor around public sector with the fixed price and thing, it does snap everybody to attention, and it does give you the ability when because we do the project with the customer, not to the customer. So when one of us is missing, it does give us a vehicle to have that conversation. And two, if that conversation wasn't fruitful, we have an escalation process. I think really when it comes down to it, the public sector, the purchasing process is a little more structured, is where it ends up. Absolutely. You know, I think the commercial buyers have become more, in some ways, more like the public sector buyers, because people are so risk averse now. There's committees and you know, they know a lot about you and they know a lot about the solution before they even call you. So it ends up being a little bit more like public sector than it did maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I do think the buying process in public sector, because sometimes they have rules that where if everybody qualified, the low bid is the low bid, even if they're pretty sure that one party can do the work better than the others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally does. Seen that quite a few times. So tell me then, what do you see the future of the customer engagement side of things with the Dynamics practice? Do you see it changing much? You know, we're seeing more and more in the consumer side of the customer, where the customer says, "Don't treat me like like all my peers or others. Treat me as a customer of one. You know, I want unique attention," that type of thing. And yes. I suppose more on the marketing side, that is what they're seeking. What do you see going forward? How are partners that run Dynamics practice going to need to pivot more when it comes to customer engagement?
I couldn't agree more with the I think some people say mass consumerization, mass personalization. That kind of thing figuring out a way for the customer feel like you've designed that engagement just for them and you're available at whenever they need, you know, kind of back to the attention economy thing and on-demand economy. I think that is becoming hypercritical and setting up our organizations to meet that demand, not just the project demand, but the customer journey demand. And I also think, and this is perhaps slightly controversial, but you know, stay with me for a second. I've been thinking a lot about the way that we engage with our customers, and if you think about what you and I just talked about, that okay, well, we're going to do multiple projects for a customer over a long, long time and hope they get what they want. And you start thinking about the way we would engage with the customer. Does it always make sense to charge the customer some dollars per hour to come in and do some work over the next 6 months or a year? Right. Or do we start to think about other business models? So think about like these traffic signals where you go through it, and if it was yellow when I tried to go in it, and oops, it turned to the red, and I got a ticket. So the way that I just said, the normal way, quote unquote normal way. So Mark and Chuck are the traffic signal company, and we use the old school way. We charge them some dollars per hour, let's say $50 an hour, to go hang up the traffic signal camera, and we pay for the camera. I don't know what's that, $5,000. I don't know what one costs, but you know, we're going to charge the customer, let's say $10,000 to set up this traffic signal, and we leave, and if it breaks, they call us and they fix it. Well, and we'll come fix it. Well, a next gen model, and I'll give you a third gen model. A next gen model is maybe there's a cool sensor in that traffic signal that says, "Oh, the camera's starting to get old." Market will, as a part of the contract, we'll have some guys come out and change the bulb in it so that it continues to work. So that's pretty cool. If you work that out to the next level, and in this business, these guys have actually already started doing this. In most towns, the companies that do these traffic signals, they don't even charge to install them. They don't charge for the signal. They don't charge for the camera. They charge per ticket. They will send the bill to the customer. They'll do everything. It's purely outcome based. And I think you and I just now guessed that we're going to charge $10,000 to put one of these things up. I don't know if it's 5. I don't know if it's 20. There's a traffic signal in Texas where this company made $1 million on one traffic signal. Every year they get $1 million. So the old way, $10,000. New way, $1 million per year. And it's never down because Mark and Chuck have a reason to keep this thing working forever, because we both get revenue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. It is, and even from a dynamics perspective, I remember Bob Stutz saying a couple of years ago when he was running the team there that he ultimately believed the sales model for a piece of software would be purely on its usage. So if you got an outcome, you carried out a search, you'd get billed for the search, if you like, rather than billed up front for the software. In other words, it was just basically the utilization of it. Every time you run a workflow, you'd get billed for that workflow, if you like. And so a totally different consumption model. Very interesting.
Pay by the drink, and it's kind of, you got to walk that out. It almost feels like you could have a model where it's consumption based with an element of outcomes, or it could be an outcome based model.
Yeah.
I do feel like that it'll kind of change a little bit versus our kind of bill for the time type model.
Yeah. Interesting. So in the next 5 to 10 years, what do you see happening, broad stroke in the dynamic space? We've seen massive changes in the last 3 to 4 from Microsoft. If you had a crystal ball, what do the next 5 to 10 years look like?
Wow. I think the bringing the ERP and CRM into one place was probably not. Other companies have done that in the past, but the way they did it with the common data service and the ability to pull things out of it in the context of the way people are doing their work, could be pretty transformational, and it almost could enable some of these kind of really neat business models that we talked about, where we're pushing information out to people that it just like at the snap of the finger, where they could help them take care of their jobs better, and so it ends up, you think about what's happened with digital transformation. It's opened up whole new industries. They said the iPhone put 27 industries into disarray. But you think about the millions of jobs that it created from companies that are building apps. So, and you start to chunk that out and think about how something that's kind of disruptive like this Dynamics 365 and all the apps that you can have and all the workflows that you can have and presenting information to people, it can help users change their job to kind of transform their job to take better care of their customers, and they kind of feel entrepreneurial. It can take business people to change their division or their company, and they can kind of become more entrepreneurial. Or it could take the real disruptors, and I'm gonna do pillows that you use it for a week and you put it in a box and you get a new fluffy cool pillow every. It's who knows but this. I think that this dynamics shift that these guys have done from Microsoft it's going to free up entrepreneurial spirit in our customers and in partners that we couldn't do before. You think about companies that kind of feel like their hands are tied. Oh, God, my information's all siloed and the CRM doesn't talk, and we've got this old thing here and thing here. And then I'm working on a little blog, and it speaks about the country Estonia. And do you know much about Estonia?
I don't. I flew over it recently. That's about it.
Well, the interesting thing, I'll tell you a quick story. First, I like it because our marketing leader at our firm is from originally, her family is from Estonia. But I saw a cool story in a book called Citizenville, where this guy, his name is Gavin Newsom. I think he's the lieutenant governor of California now, and he's kind of one of these guys that's on the rise. He was meeting with the president of Estonia, and he was all prepared to brag about how in California they could pay their traffic tickets on their cell phones. Right. This was a couple years ago, but still, he was, and this guy from Estonia was very polite, but didn't seem too impressed. And it turned out that Estonia was a part of the former Soviet Union, and when they broke apart, they decided not to let's start over and be mobile and be digital. Yep. And they, it's like everybody that lives there has 2.5 cell phones, and they believe that right to access to internet is a right, and they some really cool they were the first country to do digital voting, and so this guy wasn't really impressed that they could pay cell phones on his traffic tickets on his cell phone. But sometimes I think companies and our folks that work in our government feel constrained, and you almost get this envy about these digital entrepreneurs, and they came up with an app that that did this, and I wish I had this idea. I wish I could be freed up to help my customer better in my job, or do this in our business, or do this cool stuff in our industry. And I think it's going to free people up in a way that a platform hasn't done in a long time to be so entrepreneurial. True.
Yep, agreed, totally agree. Excellent. Okay, to close up, I just want to run through some quick fire questions with you. So, first of all, you've already mentioned a few, but what book do you recommend to most people working in Dynamics, and why?
Just as business professionals, I love Tools of Titans. The Tim Ferriss book. I love it, and I also love Disrupting Digital Business by Ray Wang. I also love this. There's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Yep, I know it. I love that book, and we've made friends at our firm with a very smart lady named Robbie Kellerman Baxter, and she wrote a book called The Membership Economy. Okay, which I like a great deal. And there's one final one that for consultants that is, I think it's for leaders. It's excellent. The Goal. It's an old book, but it's about solving problems like an engineer, not like many of us would think. I'm not an engineer by trade, but I read this book, and you start looking at things a little bit differently, and you solve for what the primary constraint is, and it tells you how to identify the constraint and what to do with it. And you think about it as consultants, that's what we do. And to have a method to that is really cool.
Brilliant. We'll get the details of all those and put them in the show notes so people can find or grab them themselves. What's your favorite app and why?
I use the podcast app on my phone and my iPad. I listen to podcasts every single day. I listen to the CRM.audio podcast.
What do you recommend? What else?
I love YouTube Red. Because it's like you can figure out anything from YouTube, and I really believe in. I like Audible. I love to listen to books on tape.
Yeah.
Those are the three apps. I go on. I open and use Twitter every day and things like that. But those are the apps that I use the most. I'm a big learner. I have to admit.
Excellent. What do you recommend to new consultants starting out in their Dynamics career?
A new consultant in their Dynamics career, I would underline that word, be a consultant. Have a point of view. I have to kind of counsel our young people kind of coming out of school. And this is just about the advice that I give them is you're going to be in meetings where you can choose to be a wallflower and you can choose to sit and take notes. Or you can choose to, if you have something to say, if you truly have a point of view and you've studied and leaders are learners. If you've learned and applied and you have a point of view for the customer, either do it the right way, either tap the senior person on the shoulder next to you and say what you want to say something, or do it the right way. But have your point of view. Have a point of view. Go into every meeting. Every single meeting, whether it's a daily status call or a key meeting, is game out. What are the things that can happen? Almost like the Game of Thrones or something like that. Yeah. And have a point of view that you're going to advance in that situation, because us folks that have been in this industry a little longer, we're the one that gets the call. Yeah. And I would take the call 100 times that says, this young person keeps getting up and it's getting maybe under my user's skin a little bit because they want, he's challenging some of I'd rather have that than the why am I paying for this person? They're just taking notes. Can we just not record this? That's absolutely my 100%. My have a point of view in before every meeting, and that means you got to do your homework. You got to game out what's going to happen in every single meeting.
Yeah, good. If you could redo anything in your career, what would it be?
It took me a long time to learn to escalate, and I forget it even today. The right times is. There's just a natural human tendency that you either don't want to be a tattletale, you don't want to break the relationships, you don't want to, and sometimes you just have to go escalate and escalate hard. And if that person's not the right person, it's you got to find the next person. And so how and when to escalate. That's I continue. I've gotten better at it, but we all. That's one thing I wished I'd learned how to do really well earlier.
So, Chuck, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Before you go, if anyone wants to find you online, what's the best way to find you?
It's been a pleasure for me too. I love talking to you. I've always enjoyed your tweets and things like that. So it's a great conversation. I think it's an exciting time for us. With all the digital and things like that going on. CRM actually just got bigger than ERP. I don't know if it's not, I kind of had to hunt that down.
Is that right? Yeah,
last year, CRM, and you think about why that happened. So, people want to get closer to their customers. And, people who are listening to this podcast are in a really, really good spot. They're in a, you pick a good thing to be doing right now.
Totally right. Totally right.
Folks can reach me at chuck.ingram, CHUCK, .ingram, INGRAM, at Tribridge.com.
This has been a Dynamics 365 podcast focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host was Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. Please subscribe and leave suggestions for future topics or guests. All details and resources covered in the podcast are available in the show notes. If you or someone you know would make a great guest for the show, please let me know. Thanks to Kingsway Soft for sponsoring the Dynamics 365 Practice Podcast.